Welcome to Teachers and Dragons podcast. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Bob.
So today we're going to talk about the whats and whys of Teachers and Dragons. So we're going to start with what is Teachers and Dragons?
And although we're going to approach things as educators, there is good information here and things of use to anyone who wants to jump into this world, look at creating one, or running a game with multiple ages and experience levels.
So we're going to start with what is tabletop RPGs, and which is not really an easy question to answer, but overall, to me, a RPG and tabletop RPG is just a collective story game, something that you build as a community and progress a story as a group. Which
go ahead. Sorry.
Which, of course, tabletop just comes from the natural playing on a table, but during this time of year and things that are going on now, it doesn't always have to be around a table. It can be online or anything.
Yeah, that proverbial virtual table. It's a collective experience, right, where the actions of one person affect the actions of everybody, and together we get to tell the story, just like Brandon said. And the key element of a tabletop RPG is the idea of role playing. And Brandon, do you want to go a little bit into what role playing is to you?
Yeah, role playing is something we do naturally as kids. We've all done role play, whether you think it is or not. We've gone outside as kids, pretended we were superheroes, pretended we were dinosaurs, running through the woods with your friends, and just playing that character of a dinosaur or superhero or whatever, and being that role as a group, and then playing it out in your head and experiencing it.
Now, if so far this sounds interesting, exciting, or fun to you, hold on to that, because as we go further, there's going to be some terminology, and there's going to be some stuff that looks and sounds intimidating. Promise that it's not. It just appears that way on the surface. But if the idea of getting with a group of friends and making up a world is fun or exciting, don't worry about the rest of this stuff. We'll get into it and we'll show you how to do it.
Yeah, it's a really easy experience, and it's something that if I can do, everyone can do. Playing a role-playing game is something that you can just jump into. I've seen kids as young as 5 playing D&D and Pathfinder and just having a blast, and you don't have to know every rule, which is the greatest part about it. Furthering kind of what tabletop RPG is, you'll see a lot of dice being used, which is kind of a stereotype that you see lots of people carrying tons of all these oddly shaped dice, but it's a very simple process. You use the dice to determine an outcome. If my character is wanting to jump a gap in a cliff, and it's something that I can't just say, oh, my character jumps it. Well, how do we know my character is able to jump that easily? So we use the randomization of the dice to help us determine, did my character achieve that goal or did he fail that goal?
And it's also worth noting that failing that goal is not a penalty. It's just a storytelling device.
We're not working against each other when we're playing any kind of role-playing games. We're working with each other. And there's 2 types of characters. Most of the characters will be the player characters, and the ones that, if you're running it as a teacher, that the students will probably play. And then the role of the teacher or the narrator would be called the game master. And again, don't be overwhelmed with all these terms, because we'll break it down. Why specifically is tabletop role-playing a good tool to use in the schools?
Well, first off, it's a chance to, if you look at your typical role-playing game size, there's a chance for 4 to 6 people on average to really get to know each other well, to get to build communication skills, team building skills, as well as some basic maths and fine motor skills.
Absolutely. And it's something we use as teachers all the time. I've seen role play done in a math class where the students have to create a business, and they have to pretend they're in this business, and they have to create a product, and they have to create the sales price. And that's a very light experience of role play. But you can see.
Yeah, and if I had $1 for every time I've seen a writing prompt that's a reflection of a book Now imagine yourself in this story, right?
Yeah, that's the role play that we've all done in English class, and you can do it. And I've seen it in social studies where they imagine themselves in a certain time period, and they have to create a character within that time period. But the good thing about tabletop RPGs is its immediate immersiveness. You find yourself in there, and instantly you're challenged with something or taking action. And you don't always achieve those actions. And as the story develops, then your character is presented with new challenges or new things to think about and work with
Absolutely.
as a group. So,
Yeah, and like we said, I mean, this is a story where we're all working together. So every action is a new opportunity to come together and have a new conclusion or scenario, whether it's an overarching one or a small immediate one.
So what would you say about tabletop RPGs or just RPGs in general about building relationships with your students?
So one thing that I see in its immediacy is very quickly in a story, you can see bonds of trust form. When one player is wounded and someone else who maybe in real life, they're not in the same social circle, they're not friends with naturally, and they risk their character running across this engagement to heal them, you actually really do see trust forming between kids. And that is very, very exciting to see. And I would also add that even in this world, right, where we're all alone, we're all stuck in our own houses and playing on a virtual tabletop, those bonds are still built, even when using an online platform.
Absolutely. That when you're talking about that building the social circle amongst students who normally wouldn't, that gave me chills because I've seen it so many times.
Absolutely.
You see your typical nerd student in a group, and then your jock player in the group, and they're working together, which they normally wouldn't ever have social experiences. And now suddenly they're in an adventure running from, a monster or trying to get over this gap, trying to seek treasure, and then they're helping each other out. And then they have something to talk about outside of that experience where they couldn't relate before. They suddenly have this grand experience, grand adventure that they're instantly connected about. So I also just the team building, the social skills, it's all a huge part of the game. But you can also incorporate content. You can incorporate your normal daily lessons into a game, and throw the kids into an experience that ties into your lessons very easily.
Yeah, and although we're probably, I would imagine, going to stay more focused in the world of D&D, there is a tabletop game for every time period. And D&D, these rules, you could set a game in a modern era just fine.
Absolutely.
And in any scenario that you want, if you want to reach into historical fiction, right, you can do that. If you want to deal with sciences, you can definitely set up more of that scenario.
Well,
absolutely.
One cool thing is, like, if you're teaching a science experiment or even like a math problem, an algebra problem, you could create a puzzle in a dungeon that the players go into, and their story has led them into this dungeon layer, and to get out of a certain room of a dungeon, they have to solve this algebraic equation. So then they're applying something they're learning in school to figure this out, and they have to work together to help solve this problem. You can apply that content so easily and naturally.
Yeah, very much. In a way that feels natural too, right? It doesn't feel like, oh, I've got to go home and do math homework. Not knocking math, but it was definitely not my favorite subject as a kid. But if there was a way to do it more like this, it would have felt definitely more alive, more fun.
Well, it's just that natural way that our students are socializing now anyway. They're all playing video games. They're online together all the time, and they're going through these challenges in imaginary worlds all the time. So why not bring what they're already doing into school, into the classroom, or even at home in your small groups?
And on a practical level, I mean, again, depending on when you're listening to this, but it is August of 2020. What better gift right now for a lot of our school kids than to take them out of the current world and give them a new scenario to operate in, one where a lot of the stressors and things that are constantly weighing on our minds just aren't there.
Yeah, it's a therapeutic thing as well. We use role play to get through some of our emotions. If we're going through something at home, the character you role play could help you, summon some of that bravery that you need just to get through your daily life. I've heard a lot of therapists, and we may get into this later, using role play as a therapy work, and this could be something that just comes out naturally in the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
So typically, tabletop RPGs are smaller settings with 4 to 6 players, and that's what you have with your school setting. Is that correct, Bob?
Yeah, we run our games and try to keep that number. We've had bigger games. That's challenging, and especially if you are a new game master. I would really strongly recommend you stick to that 4 to 6.
Now, it is possible, and don't be afraid to try it in a larger setting, and we'll break it down more later, but you can do it in a full classroom setting of 30 or more kids even to do that role play. And it becomes slower, it becomes challenging in some ways, but the flow is still there, the immersion's still there, and the students still just get so excited. I've had I was running it with a 6th grade English class, and they were talking about the story flow with the rising action, climax, and falling action. And we went through a very small module that I created, and students had to experience the game, run their characters through it, and then the next lesson they had to notate what happened in the story and then draw out what the rising action, climax, and falling action was. So they were experiencing the story and then applying it to what they were learning in English. So you can do
That's awesome.
You can do it in the large setting. It just takes some practice, and it takes bravery, which we have to have as teachers and educators in general.
And I'll back up one thing really quickly, just in case you missed it. Module is, if you want to think of it just as a chapter.
Yeah, just kind of the overall small story of the overall story. Teachers are probably already doing this. We see it all the time. So it's something that you don't have to be afraid of. And look at RPGs in the classroom as something that you can really, really expand your kids with. Get them really immersed and excited to come back. Because when I was doing it with that large class and the large classes before, they were begging to do more of it because it didn't feel like normal school.
Right. Even though they're getting the exact same concepts. And what a great gift it is as a teacher is to have your kids begging for more content, right?
So, the more we can get kids to be learning, to get them immersed into the class, into whatever content that we're learning, the better, because it's just real life application. It's something that they can experience instantly and be able to have that. The more tools we have as teachers, the better.
Yeah, and I'd also add that from a professional standpoint, it really is a fun way of reimagining your own content and your own curriculum. It's a creative way to think completely outside the box and say, okay, if I could do literally anything I want to do and how to teach these standards. So it's a great way and a refreshing way of looking at some of those same tried and true things that we've done for years.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for all this time, Bob, and we will continue next time. We'll answer some more questions and break it down. So like we said before, don't feel overwhelmed. Look forward to this and incorporating this in any setting that you have, whether it's at home or in the classroom.
Yeah, my parting shot would be, if you're still listening and you're still with us, imagine just some of the opportunities and things that you already role play in your regular life.
Awesome.
And if you have that in your head as we move forward, this will become a whole lot easier.
Awesome. Well, have a great day. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, you too.